Hello, I'm Drake Fires. I'm a sort of new DM, and I would like to share what I know, what I've learned, and any questions I have with anyone interested. Today, I'd like to talk about books. This is the Player's Handbook. This is the Dungeon Master's Guide. And this is Xanathar's Guide to Everything. The Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide are what is referred to as core rulebooks, also with the Monster Manual. Books like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Volo's Guide to Monsters, the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and the upcoming Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes are secondary books that add more options but are not needed to play. In fact, none of these books are needed to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. All you need is the free starter guide on Wizards of the Coast's website. It has rules for Dungeon Masters and for players. I would argue that if you want to move beyond just those simple rules, you only really need one, maybe two of the core rule books. The Player's Handbook contains all the rules really needed to play. It has explanations of magic, combat, armor, skills, money, merchants, what you can buy, weapons, really anything you need to play, even for the Dungeon Master. In fact, if your Dungeon Master does not have an understanding of what's inside the Player's Handbook, if you're playing 5th edition, you better make sure they have a really good reason, because all this stuff is important. I would argue that this stuff is probably more important to the DM than it is to the players. Stuff like explaining potions of healing is explained in this. How stuff weighs. All this stuff a player needs to keep track of for themselves, but a Dungeon Master needs to keep track of for all their players to make sure they know what their players have. Any NPCs in the world, basically a lot of stuff for the world in general. Stuff like combat, casting a spell, dashing, disengaging, dodging, helping, hiding. All this stuff is important. It even has most of the spells that are published out right now. The second book I would recommend getting is the Monster Manual, which is the one core rulebook I don't have. There are the stats for most common monsters in Dungeons & Dragons. This is particularly useful if you don't want to search online for all the stats. Like, Roll20 has a lot of the monster stats, and it's officially licensed by Wizards of the Coast, but it is not a replacement for the Monster Manual because Wizards of the Coast want to make all of the money from selling physical copies of the books. So, they do have a lot of the stats, but not everything. So, you could probably still find the stats online, but it would be so much easier to just have everything you need just right in front of you. Oh, and Roll20 also does not have things like the templates for monsters like Monster Manual, I'm pretty sure. Things like the zombie or the guard template. I think there's a guard template in Monster Manual. Not entirely sure. Like I said, I don't have the book. I need it. Now, the Dungeon Master's Guide. This one isn't really necessary to be a Dungeon Master, but it is also very helpful. It has guides to world building, campaign building, making organizations, the different planes of the multiverse. It explains the multiverse. That's also kind of important if you want to go on large transplanar adventures, which most of high-level D&D is based around. It also has a bunch of random tables for rolling, like settlements, dungeons themselves, traps, even the crap in the dungeons that you don't really think about. Also, it has all the magic items. Has great stuff. Yeah. I would pick this up mostly for the magic items, and because most of the stuff, if you are creative enough, you don't really need the guides to like world building and stuff. It's helpful, but ultimately not exactly 100% necessary. Secondary books aren't really needed, but they do have some great options. I wouldn't get these books just to have them. I would get them if you have a specific want of some of the options in here. Like, I mostly got the Anaplayer's Guide just because of the new Bard options and the new Warlock options. Also, the new spells. Everything else, it's nice. Probably not going to use most of it. But, yeah. Really some great stuff in here, like new spells. I particularly like the Bladed Bard. It basically turns a bard into more of a fighter. Great stuff. Now, books like Volo's Guide to Monsters, that has more extra monsters that one would find generally in the world that are not as common as the stuff in the monster manual. It also adds more exotic races for players to play as. Things like full-blooded orcs, the cat people Tabaxi. Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide is mostly just stuff for the players too. The upcoming Mordenkainen's Foes, I think, is mostly for the Dungeon Master, as it adds more planar stuff and more enemies. I'm looking forward to that one because it sounds interesting. I only know 5e and a very small amount of 2nd edition, so my question is, what are the other core rulebooks for various systems like? I know Pathfinder has an absolutely huge rulebook that is basically the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, and Monster Manual all rolled into one. What are other systems rulebooks like the White Wolf games like Vampire Masquerade or the Werewolf ones, or Shadowrun's rulebooks like, or even older editions of D&D. So, if you can answer my questions, comment down below. If you have more questions that you would like me to cover, comment below. That's all for right now. See you later.